I too want to rise in support of this bill and also add my voice of thanks to everyone who worked so hard on this bill. But I especially want, and this is a great moment for the Senate. This is a great moment for the legislature, and we should be very, very proud. This has been the product of a lot of hard work over a couple of years, but I especially wanted, as Senator Marty and others did, just highlight the fact that this actually comes after many more years preceding the couple of 2-3 years that we've been aware of and working hard on this subject on the part of parents and senior citizens themselves who have been working to bring attention to what was going on in a lot of these facilities, both nursing homes, already licensed facilities, as well as the more community-based housing with services, assisted living facilities that currently aren't subject to licensure. I'll never forget a conversation I had around my table in my office with constituents of mine who also happened to be some of the founding members of Elder Voice Family Advocates, telling me their stories through tears about what their parents had experienced, stories of tragedy and pain and suffering that were extremely disturbing to hear about, and their extremely frustrating efforts over the course of a long, long time to have those problems addressed in real time, to be rebuffed by facility managers, and to have no outlet and no response, and to run into a wall of silence when turning to elected officials and public agencies and enforcement agencies and the like. And it was an exasperating and overwhelming conversation, and I didn't even know where to begin to try to help them because it was so just so huge, and clearly the system that they were describing just wasn't in place to respond to them. It just wasn't in place. Fortunately, it happened just a couple of weeks before the deadline of our submittals for our legislative auditor analysis ideas was due, and so we got busy, and Senator Housley helped promote that idea as well, and the legislative auditor took it up, and I think it got the most number of votes. I think you all voted for that idea, and in the House there was some organizing as well, and the legislative auditor started its analysis. In the meantime, the Star Tribune started paying attention, and of course we're familiar with the series of stories by the Star Tribune reporter Chris Sears, and then the governor got involved after that series was published, and some folks came together in a discussion around making recommendations. Senator Housley then convened a work group, and then we started on down the path of crafting legislation. Unfortunately, that legislation didn't pass last biennium, but by that time, Commissioner Malcolm was in place, and she continued to convene folks and bring them together, and the product of that were the bills that I introduced, bills that Senator Housley introduced, and we're standing here today, and this is a great moment, and I'm extremely happy about that. But I did want to take just 1 second to just to remember those stories, and I would encourage folks to take a look at the Elder Voice Family Advocates. I think if they hadn't done their organizing and grassroots work of really talking to people about what those experiences were, what their parents went through, and what the response of the system was, then we wouldn't be standing here today. And they have on their website a number of victim abuse reports and case studies of death after neglect, and death from untreated emergency conditions, sexual assault, amputation of legs, financial exploitation, physical and emotional abuse, and those stories go on, and they're very, very hard to hear and very, very hard to stomach. But in some way, I am just so amazed at the courage of families, even after all of this has happened, and they would much rather put these experiences behind them to just persist and move forward and try to make life better for those who follow. It bears mentioning that a number of the findings of the legislative auditor to the Department of Health never were enacted in law as directive. Some were, but many weren't, because the Commissioner of Health just went ahead and started down the path of implementing a number of those recommendations. At the time of the report, it was found that 24,000 reports had come in 2017, and only 5% of those reports had been triaged sufficiently that an on-site investigation could be conducted. There was no quality control measures, no way to inform family members or vulnerable adults what was happening with those investigations, no management of data, no ability to do much with that data. So even though we didn't direct the Commissioner to do these things, they have now dealt with the entire backlog. Still 400 reports come in a week, but they have a better ability to manage with them. And a great deal of some part of the funding that's coming in, and thank you, Senator Rosen, for fully funding this package, and that's fantastic. And some portion of this funding, well, not Senator Rosen, all of us, of course, but Senator Rosen kind of holds the keys to the cookie jar around here. And so we appreciate that. And that's going to bolster the work and the staffing and the quality control and the systems and technology improvements that the Department of Health actually needs. And so I'm grateful for that as well. And just finally, I'll wrap up by saying, some of these items that are in the bill, it's a very comprehensive bill. It's about 150 pages long, but it does go far to enact consumer protections, as Senator Housley presented in her opening remarks, the protections from arbitrary termination, compensation in the interim for harm, for maltreatment, the Assisted Living Bill of Rights, even though we don't have the right of private action. That's regrettable. We did strengthen the Assisted Living Bill of Rights. Likewise, we didn't pursue inclusion of the right of survivorship so that a claim can continue after someone dies, but we do have many other provisions that strengthen consumer protections. The right to electronic monitoring, we talked, of course, that actually at one time we thought was going to be the big solution, the granny cams. And prohibition of retaliation, a big point of contention, was resolved. And so I look forward to the next couple of years as we get underway with the very public and collaborative process of establishing licensure, the 2 tiers of licensure for assisted living facilities. I think the points raised by Senator Westrom and Senator Eakin about hitting that sweet spot. There's going to be a lot of things we learn as this bill goes into effect, but it is a huge step forward and a credit, and I think probably the feel-good bill of the year, so I'm very proud of our work. I especially want to thank, of course, by name, there are many, many people who warrant thanks, but the folks that I work the most closely with, my posse, if you will, Chris Sundberg, Kay Bromelkamp, Gene Peters, and Ann Sterner from Elder Voice Family Advocates, and Ron Elwood from Legal Services, and Mary Jo George and Maureen O'Connell from AARP, and of course Liam Monahan, I think, was already thanked, but we tortured him and tormented him regularly, Senate Council, with lots and lots and lots and lots of legal writing and lots of changes and lots of rush orders and that sort of thing. So thank you very much, members. I'll be voting green, and I encourage others to as well.